Hello everyone, I'm here again to play some Puzzle Rush survival puzzles on my quest for a top score of 50 here on chess.com. Here we go. Just give this knight check. This turns out to be mate. He's covered in red squares. This just looks like mate in 2. We can block with the bishop, which frees up that square, but when we capture with the queen, it does cover that square. It just looks like mate in 2. Queen check, he blocks with his queen, then we take. This just looks like mate in 1, supported by the knight. 2 escape options. This one limits our further escape options after that, so this is obligated. And then that looks obligated as well. Let's give this check. If he blocks with the bishop, our rook swings down, supported by this bishop to deliver mate. If he blocks with the queen, we just exchange queens, and then we swing down with the rook. This check looks nice. And this rook is quite loose. So even if he were to go here, this check would force him here. Then we give this check with this rook, which allows us to double up on this rook and still maintain defense of this h1 square. Just a queen and bishop battery. You have to ask yourself what's the difference between these two squares. If you move your queen here, it doesn't cover this square, so we have to give mate there. Might be tempted to give a queen check here, but this bishop check is much stronger. He's obligated to block with the rook, but we can just take it and give mate. We've got a loose pawn right next to 2 loose pieces. So do that, pick up this knight. Interesting. This pattern here. But we can distract his king. His king is the only piece defending his queen. So if we distract it, we can pick up his queen. A pretty classic position. The thing that strikes me is his king is completely covered. It's completely smothered. So we have 2 checks to choose from. This knight, or this pawn will be pinned by my queen, but this square is also defended by this pawn, and this square only has that pawn defending it, and when it's pinned, this is mate. Interesting. Why is this so tricky? So if we jump in with the knight, or let's just fork these 2 pieces. Yeah. So this knight is the only piece defending this bishop. So if we capture it, it gives check, which leaves this bishop hanging. Interesting. If we give this check, he can pick up the rook with his bishop, but then we give check again. But he blocks with his knight. Then we give this check with our bishop, which his queen is covering, but our bishop is covered by our pawn, so... The square is covered by our queen. Oh, it's just mate in one. Gotta recapture the rook. Real puzzles really starts after that. So we want to make a passed pawn, but we don't want to let him advance. So we capture his pawn first, and then we push to create this passed pawn. Do we want the draw? We have a draw available. It really seems like the best option. Oh, it's white to move. Ugh, my bad. Ah. Interesting. We have this check. Actually, he would be obligated to go down. Because if he were to go up, that would allow us to no, that wouldn't. Oh, yeah. So if he goes up... Man. I want to get my rook to that square, but how do I do that? This is tricky. Oh. Yeah, we do just do that. It doesn't matter. Yeah. White to move. If we give this check, he's obligated here, which we can then give another check with our pawn, and he's forced here. Do we push? No, we give mate. So this rook is x-raying this rook. So if we start with this check first, and he captures our queen, we then capture our rook, which then he's forced to block with his queen. and then we take his queen, and then we just win the rook, or left a rook up. So this queen was being protected by this rook, but with this last knight move, this queen no longer has any defenders. So we can take advantage of that by giving this check, and then he takes our pawn, or our knight with his pawn, and then we are able to take his queen. What you then want to ask is he able to give a check with his knight to then pick up our queen? But he is not. So I think the person playing white here thought that after I take this bishop, this queen check forks the knight and the king. But what he failed to understand was that I can block two threats. Oh. I'll just block. Just scoot over. I was going to say, if he gave this check, we could block two threats at once, blocking the check and moving the knight to be protected. I think we should just move here. Moving here. Or, yeah, no, let's just scoot back. That's much safer. This check looks nice because we already have this rook over here. So this check forces this, and we swing back down, which forces this, and then we swing back with this rook to deliver mate. Whoa, what am I doing? Black to move. This is just a knight fork. Yeah. Oh, it's pinned. You dummy. You just deliver mate. Sorry. It's been a long day. Interesting. So I think my first thoughts went to checkmating, but I don't find anything immediately. These squares are covered. He's just going to pick up this pawn. So I say we just give this check and pick up the rook. So my king is in a much better position to defend against his pawn. So I want to just get rid of this rook, and a way to do that is to pin it to his king, and then push my passed pawns. So in this case, this pawn does quite well in just holding these three pawns back. So he would be able to eventually make a passed pawn over here, but I think my pawn is faster. But I can't push it yet. I have to support it with my king. So we need to defend this pawn, but we also want to get rid of his rook. And this pawn is covering a very important square that we can utilize. And this important square is on the same rank as the white king. So we take advantage of that. This is just a classic smothered mate, uh, which turns out to be a royal fork as well. Interesting. So, we can make a passed pawn, but then he's immediately able to capture it with his king. So I want to distract his king. So with this check, if he takes either of these pawns, I can just take and then run, and I'm pretty sure my passed pawns will be faster than his because of that check. This check looks nice. It forces him here. Then we can give a pawn check, which forces him here. And then we can give a rook check, but he just takes this pawn. That can't be it, right? Can't even do that because he picks up the rook. So if we do this, we don't give this rook check. We have to give a check that also supports this pawn, which is this check, which I think turns out to be mate as well. He has an escape square available to him. If we get that check, this is just a loose knight. We can pick up this knight after we give that check. Yeah, I don't think there's a mate in here to find. This is interesting. So if we threaten to win the exchange, no, I don't think that works. So if we threaten that fork, he would be obligated to remain on the back rank. But this, so he's obligated to remain on the back rank, but then we take this bishop with our bishop, and then if he wants to recapture that bishop. So at the end of the day, we're going to give this check to pick up a rook. I think that's the plan. Start with the bishop exchange. It's much more forcing. This might look tempting, but he just takes it. So you gotta start with the rook, and if he takes with the bishop, we take with our bishop, which forks king and the rook. If he doesn't take our rook, it just leaves a very dangerous discovered check opportunity. But if he moves out of that, it's just a free knight, so. If I give this queen check, he either blocks with the bishop, which just loses the bishop, or he scoots here, and then I give that check, and if he wants to scoot over again, I can just give this check, and then he might block, and then I give another check. But then I just end up mating him. So this square is supported by the pawn, so it allows us to deliver check with our queen. And then if he goes to the H file, we give check. It'll either be mate or we coordinate with the queen to deliver mate on H8. So he's not going to go to this file, so he's obligated to go here. But we can still just threaten. We can still just threaten mate. His only recourse is to take our rook with check. Then we scoot over. Then he might deliver another check. And then we scoot over again, and then his only recourse is to I don't think he has any more recourse after that, so he just sacrifices the queen. So pushing g6 drops one defender from this knight. That catches my eye. And so yes, and so we have two ways to pile up the pressure on this pinned knight. So let's look at this queen move first. If we do that, then he defends with the bishop. But then if we try to pile on again with our knight over here, this knight is no longer pinned to his queen, so he just exchanges. Actually, we wouldn't even take there. We would have to take there. No, he would take with his knight. So all that said to say, we start by piling on pressure with this knight move, which covers the e7 square from the bishop defending this knight. So when we pile on, if he defends this knight with his bishop, we then take his bishop, and then either of those recaptures doesn't do anything to protect against this queen swinging in to eventually win this knight. That I didn't consider. It doesn't break this pawn, so we just move ahead with this, with piling on the pressure. So here, I didn't calculate this far. So this capture is check. So I think we just start with that. And if he captures our knight with his bishop, we are then able to capture with our queen to move our queen out of the range of this knight. So we don't do this, as that's check. And then he just picks up our bishop. So we do this, and if he wants to recapture, he's forced to take with his bishop, and then we take his bishop. And then we are up a bishop. This check forks the bishop and the king. Although he's very close to promoting. So with this check, can't go here. So the queen would x-ray this d8 square, but with this check, he would probably move his king here to add further support to the d8 square. But that doesn't mean that's necessarily a bad move. Check, scoot. This check, I think, just loses even harder. I still like this. I just need to find a way to add some extra defense to d8, maybe? What about, what about this check? I think that's a much better check to give. Supported by the knight, he's forced to move to this square, which then allows us to give a knight check, which forces him here. Then what about that check? He's forced here. I'll give that check. He's forced back up. And then I give this check, which looks like mate. Wow. I guess this check is unneeded. I can just probably do that immediately. That's rough. Maybe next time. Let's look at these puzzles that I lost. I got wrong. So I think, yeah, I was just thinking about this loose knight. I think that one was correct, right? It was just the knight capture that was wrong. Ah, yeah, yeah. So when you find a good move, look for a better one. You can give this check with the queen, and if he moves back, you give mate with the rook, and if he scoots over, you give mate with the queen. So that's one. This one. Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think it's just you. I thought you would start. No, okay, okay. You start with this, and then you exchange rooks first. Oh, you don't even need this knight move. Okay, so yeah, so you scoot up, exchange the rook, and then you get this. Oh, okay, no, you do. Gosh, you do need this knight check. So, okay, 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 okay. Check. If he moves here, he loses the rook. So he moves here. I give check. He ends up here. Then I think I pick up this bishop, and if he wants to recapture it, he's forced to take with the rook, but then my A file is still open, and his king is still on the back rank, so I give that check, and if he wants to defend this rook, his king moves here, which then I can knight fork him. Then he moves here, and then I check. I take the rook, and he takes my knight, but then his knight's left on the board, and my rook's left on the board. Yeah. Okay, let's try this third one. Let's play it again. Yeah, check. Check. Yeah, how about this check? He's forced here. So why is this one wrong? Because he moves here. And I don't have access to this square to give mate. I think I might have said give this check, but I probably missed that it's covered by the rook, so, and then that's mate. Okay. Okie doke. 35. Maybe next time. Take care.